You have probably met a number of Japanese Filipinos who have moved or are moving to Japan for good. But how many of you have actually met one who moved from Japan back home to the Philippines? Meet Takashi, who was born and raised in Shizuoka, Japan, and is now a full-time resident of Metro Manila.
In 2014, I was a third-year student at Kanagawa University. On the morning of March 15, 2014, I came across a Facebook post that the JFC Network is holding its annual general meeting. So I jumped in and attended the meeting. Despite my sudden visit, the staff and board members of JFC Network welcomed me with open arms. That was my first encounter with JFC Network. Later, a staff invited me to participate in an essay contest for their 20th anniversary event to be held in May. The title represents my childhood experience. After my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, my mom worked day and night to raise me and to send money to our family in the Philippines. My mom worked in a nightclub at night. I was too young that she could not leave me home alone, so she took me to her workplace. I spent my time in the waiting room of the nightclub until she finished her work. When her work was over at midnight, my mom woke me up with kisses and drew my hand to take me home. I wrote the essay in Japanese and submitted to JFC Network. Later, Mr. Ray Ventura, a filmmaker and writer who attended the 20th anniversary, compiled the essays of the contest participants into a book. The book was to be published by Ateneo de Manila University Press in the Philippines. The Japanese essays had to be translated into English. So at that time, Kuya Ray renamed the original title of my essay to Killing Time and Midnight Kisses. He told me that that was the scene that came up vividly in his mind when he was reading my essay. I think a feeling of wanting to become pure Japanese comes from the influence of my mom's child-rearing principle. While Filipino values are important to my mom, she always told me that I should follow the Japanese culture and system as long as I live in Japan. She did not want me to be embarrassed at school or the homes of my Japanese friends. As I grew up and learned more about society, I started to take care of the paperwork for the government and the schools by myself, instead of asking my mom to do them because she could not understand difficult Japanese words. I could not rely on my father or my Japanese relatives, so I thought I had to cover it and be independent from my mom. I have never been ashamed of being a Filipino, but we often had arguments because of the conflict in our different way of thinking. After I entered the university, I became aware of cultural diversity through my studies and interactions with international students in the school. That was the time I think I became proud of both my Japanese and Philippine roots. My mom no longer took me to the nightclub anymore by the time I was 10 years old. My mom had to quit her nightclub job and was working in a factory during the day. However, she needed to focus on her job to send money to the Philippines at that time. So she left me to my father. At my father's house, my grandmother took care of me. My father was so busy working that he goes to work before I woke up and come home at night when I was asleep. So I like to make simple drawings before going to bed. Sometimes my father went out of his way to color it for me, though he was tired. The next morning, I found my drawings carefully colored by my father with colored pencils. I remember I was very happy because I did not have much time to spend with my father then. That is one of the few memories I have of living with my father. I grew up in Japan, so I did not know much about what life is like in the Philippines. So I thought it would be better to live here to understand the values and cultures of the Filipino people. When I visited the Philippines during my childhood, I was always told that I should not go anywhere alone. I feel I grew up incapable of doing anything on my own here in the Philippines. I felt ashamed of myself for being dependent and naive in the country where I want to be from. So I made up my mind to move to the Philippines for my personal growth. Relocating to the Philippines has strengthened my desire to realize my dream all the more. Through my job as a recruitment consultant, I learned that there are other JFC who want to move and work in the Philippines. I believe that is mutually beneficial for both the country and the JFC themselves. JFC can contribute to the development of the Philippines, and their stay in the Philippines would bring them great experiences that can make their life colorful. Maligaya House is the office of JFC Network in the Philippines. It provides legal and financial support for the Japanese Filipino children who want to be recognized by their Japanese fathers. I am helping Maligaya House as the person authorized to collect DNA samples necessary for the recognition process in Japan. I just started to involve with the activity of Maligaya House recently, but I would continue this because it is rewarding to support JFC. I could understand how tragic the car accident was from the tears in my mom's eyes when she was telling me the story. The accident has taken her left eyesight and she has been suffering until now. My heart hurts every time I think of her getting old in Japan. That feeling urges me to bring her back to the Philippines to let her enjoy life here where she can live with my siblings. People say life in Japan is convenient, advanced, and less stressful in different ways. Although life in the Philippines is not the same as in Japan. I do not think the quality of my life has downgraded after moving here. It is rather fun seeing how quickly things are developing here and there with my own eyes.